I'm a Republican, and she, of course, is a liberal Democrat. But in the years that I was mayor, we became friends, and I trust her completely. And she's one of the hardest working people in Congress. I mean, bar none. And I, she says she's innocent, and I believe her. And I had some people would question me, why would you do that? And I just don't think you abandon a friend just because they're in trouble. And in this case, I also had the added benefit that I did believe her story. She asked. I mean, if I've got a good friend that asks me to do something like that, I say yes every time. And I've done it before. And so I wasn't a fact witness. In other words, I knew nothing about her personal finances. But what you're allowed to do is to ask a witness an opinion as to somebody's trustworthiness and honesty. And so I was able to say that. She's one of the most honest people I've ever met. I mean, she's blunt, and it sometimes gets her in trouble that she's so blunt. And I don't think she's really capable of deceiving. That's just not her. This was not what they were going to question about, but I also never knew her to be motivated by money. She really was motivated into helping people. And can I tell you two quick stories about her? Yeah. Okay. When I was mayor, I went up to see her, and I got my earlier appointment finished up a little early, and so I went to her office to use the phone. I'd forgotten to bring a charger for my phone, so my cell phone had gone dead. And so I was calling back to the office in the front, and she walked in, and she had a big plate covered in tinfoil. And she said, "Mayor, how come you're out here?" And I said, "Well," my phone's dead. I forgot to bring a charger on this trip, and so your staff's letting me use the phone." And she says, "Look, you just go into my office. If I'm not here, this is your office. This is your home." She says, "I saw from your schedule you weren't going to have time to have lunch, so I brought you some food from a banquet I was at, and we can talk while you eat." And she was right. I had it stacked. I wasn't going to have time to have lunch that day. And so, "What kind of phone do you have?" And I told her, and she said, "I've got the same one. Let's charge it up while we talk." I said, "Look, keep that charger. I've got a bunch of them," because she knew I was going to be in D.C. for another couple days. And I had 14 city issues. On 12 of them, she knew more than me. On the other 2, she called her staff in, and they were on top of those issues. And that's just simply the way she did it. She just would fight to the death for you, and she was kind and a considerate person. And so another time, about a year ago, I was in D.C. on another meeting. It was not on UNF business, but something happened to my eye, and my left eye. And I don't know where an eye doctor is up here, and so our staff called our 2 local congressmen to say, what is a close eye doctor near here? And so Andrew Crenshaw's office told us there was one literally very close to where I was in a meeting room. But Corrine Brown called back every hour for a day and a half to find out how I was. And she had lined up the congressional physician to see me. And it turned out it was a real benign thing. It was nothing, but it was a little scary. I didn't know if I could fly with whatever was going on, and it was no problem. But until she talked to me, she kept checking. And she would have done that for any of you. I mean, if you'd walked in, and you don't have to be in her district. If she feels like she needs to help somebody, she goes at it full bore. And my nephew married a girl from Peru. And so working through immigration, her office was just terrific, and again, she'd do that for anybody. She was that kind of a congressperson. And so I value our friendship. I just had lunch with her last week, as a matter of fact, and I just don't turn on people when they're in trouble. And I know a lot of my Republican friends think she's kind of a political cartoon, and I just know her. I know her to be a really sweet human being. And so I'd do that. I'd do it again and wouldn't bat an eye. They were good. They were good. They were really good. And she's convinced that she's going to win and on appeal, and that she's going to run back for Congress. And so she's an upbeat person all around, and it didn't look even dented. Now, she told me that she had a few low days. There's no question of that. But her chief of staff and an old friend of hers, separately, 2 people ended up testifying kind of against her. And I wondered if she was going to be bitter about that. And she says, no. She says, I know what pressure the federal prosecutors put on them. And then the chief of staff had been stealing money. And she says, I don't know what got into him, And so she wasn't even bitter at him, and she was trying to be an empathetic human being, even though she's been convicted of 18 federal counts. And so I'm praying for her. I did before, and I'm going to keep doing it. I was a little surprised, to be honest. I know that even one of the federal prosecutors thought that they had a fairly weak case. They thought she was guilty, of course, or they wouldn't have brought the charges. But in saying that, you know, I'm an old trial lawyer myself. I was a prosecutor, and it's hard to win in federal court. The rules are just stacked against you, and juries don't like corruption charges against public officials, and even though technically what she was being convicted of didn't have anything to do with public money, it was donor money. So anyway, I hope it gets reversed, and I actually think it will. I think she should win her appeal. Yeah. There was a question about a juror that was removed that was adamant about her innocence. And another juror kind of had the judge confront that witness, and then allegedly that juror went back in there and said, hey, they just put her in jail. And so one or two other votes that wanted to vote non-guilty were kind of scared and felt they had to vote guilty. So we'll see where it goes.